Now let's talk about the distinction between long form and social content. And there is a very important distinction that I want you to be thinking about when you think about the difference between the long form and social. And again, just a quick reminder, long form here, I'm talking about a blog, a podcast, a YouTube channel, anything that lives off of social. And I know some people will talk about YouTube as social, but YouTube is not a social network. And so we're talking about those things versus social media content. And the first thing to understand is that long form content is an investment. It's something that in your mind, you should think about it as I'm investing when I'm creating long form content. And there's a couple of implications to that. Number one, you need to understand that the reason you will invest in it is because long form content can have a long life cycle. So the stuff you create today could pay dividends for months and even years to come. I know people who create a podcast, or not a podcast, but a blog post, for example, and it continues to drive traffic and drive sales for them multiple years down the line. Same thing with YouTube. I know plenty of people who will tell me that they have a YouTube video that they shot 2 years ago or 3 years ago and loaded up, and it is continuing to get attention and it is continuing to bring people into their world and maybe even buy from them. But also I want you to know that long form content is a very slow burn for awareness. In other words, you're not going to get people's attention right away with long form content. It's going to take time to start ranking in search engines or ranking on YouTube to really be able to build awareness with your long form content. So that's why I say it's an investment. You know, putting work in now may not immediately pay off, but once you start doing it, you'll start to see it pay off over time. Now, on the other hand, short or social content is an expense, and you should think of it as an expense for your business because it's kind of like the direct opposite of long form content. It has a micro life cycle. Like leaving aside things like stories and the things that literally disappear, social posts will rarely get seen more than a week after they're posted. And so the benefit will be immediate. Now, I want to caveat that slightly by saying that there are certain social platforms, and I'm thinking of LinkedIn specifically. LinkedIn, it will have a slightly longer lifespan because there's not as much content being created there, so people will tend to see it a couple of weeks. Maybe it has value. But you're rarely seeing social content, or social content that you create will rarely be seen more than a couple weeks after it's created, unless you're spending ad money behind it. But that's the only way you'll be seeing it. But the good part about it is that it's a potential jump start to awareness. If you do social right, you can get attention way faster and build brand awareness way faster with social than you can with long form content, just because of the nature of things. And so that's kind of, you have investments for long form and an expense for social content. So with that in mind, how should you approach the mix? Now, long term, you should be investing in long form content. Even if you're not seeing returns immediately, you need to be making those investments. And the sooner you start investing in creating long form content, the better, because the sooner it'll start to bear fruit and the sooner you'll get value. Now, it won't be immediate, but if you wait 2 years, the effect will be 2 years from now. So that's why you need to be thinking about that. Now, social content, on the other hand, you should recognize the time, the money, the effort you spend in creating content, as a cost. And so you should be creating that strategy based upon the short-term return on investment for the time and money you spend on your social content. Now, I want to be clear here and give a caveat. You won't always know the impact of your social strategy. You won't always be able to gauge and measure your return on investment. But if you can't identify a benefit that is coming from your social content, then you need to be thinking about it and saying, well, if I'm not getting, if no one ever engages, if no one ever sees this stuff, should I be creating it? And you need to think about it and make those decisions much more quickly, because otherwise you might just be spinning your wheels, spending a bunch of time creating content that no one will ever see. And then, that's where you're kind of on a content treadmill rather than doing something that will really build your business and help you to stop having to constantly create and constantly create. So that's the distinction here when we're thinking about the two different kinds, the long form versus social content.